Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss a few components of OT grammar. Optimality theory, as we have already seen in the previous videos, it began with Prince's and Smolensky's 1993 manuscript, which was known as Optimality theory, constraint interaction in generative grammar, which was later published in 2004 as a book. Though it started with the field of phonology, it also has its impact overwhelmingly seen in the fields of syntax, semantics, sociolinguistics, and many other fields within linguistic theories. And it is also regarded as the top 5 developments in the history of generative grammar. Though it is same or it assumes the central assumptions made by generative grammar, but it has certain differences with generative grammar. Then why do we need OT? If already there is generative grammar and the central assumptions are same, then what was the motivation to start a new program called Optimality theory? Since the early 1970s, it has been clear that phonological and syntactic processes are influenced by constraints on the output of the grammar. So these are the important facts for which OT as a field of study or a theoretical framework emerged out of the central assumptions made by generative phonology. So the central assumption is that there are output constraints and constraints which operate in the mapping from input to output. And these are the things which makes OT very different from other theories. And here there are two kinds of influences which are identified to have a very big role in the emergence of OT as a theoretical framework. Phonological processes can be blocked by output constraints. So why there is a blocking by certain output constraints? So something happens on the output and there are prohibitions. Then phonological processes can also be triggered by output constraints. That means there are something in the output level and due to which certain processes are triggered. Now, over the last years, a constraint-based approach, which is known as optimality theory, which is a breakthrough from the earlier rule-based account of phonological system of language's grammar, started to emerge, and which is the core of our discussion. That is called optimality theory. In early generative grammar, which was propounded by Chomsky's aspects of theory of syntax, as you are all aware of this book, which founded the pathway for generative syntax, and Chomsky and Halle's 1968 book, Sound Patterns of English, SPE, it was the first book on generative phonology. So these two books actually paved the way for generative phonology. So in the early 1970s, the generative tradition of linguistic studies has emerged as that itself was a breakthrough from the earlier structuralist overview. In generative grammar, processes took shape of rewrite rules, while the major mode of interaction was linear ordering. So rules are linearly ordered, so you have different kinds of rule ordering such as feeding, bleeding, counter feeding, counter bleeding, etc. And these rewrite rules are ordered after one another. And the rewrite rules take as their input a linguistic representation, part of which is modified in the output. Also, rules apply one after another, where one rule's output is the next rule's input. So if they are ordered, that means if rule A has been operated first and then rule B comes, That means the output of rule A behaves as the input to rule B if they are linearly ordered, as presumed by generative grammar. Now, there are demands which are put on the surface form, not only the rules and how they are ordered, but in constraint-based approach like optimality theory, as against rule-based approach like the earlier generative account. In constraint-based approach, there is a demand to be put under the surface form, and any form that does not comply with these constraints is rejected in favor of a form that does not favor these constraints. So output is very important in a constraint-based approach. Optimality theory also holds that constraints are universal, but still languages have different phonologies. How? Because they are ordered differently. And in addition to what we have just noted, OT also explains this position of universal constraint resulting in differences in grammars by two major arguments. One is that the phonology of a language is decided by the ranking of the set of universal constraints. The phonology of a language is given by the ranking of the set of universal constraints. This ranking is known as the language's constraint hierarchy. So if there is a ranking, then automatically a hierarchy is constituted. Such developments came also in the generative grammar, earlier generative framework, propounded by Chomsky's 1965 and Chomsky and Halle's 1968 monographs. Developments came to their logical conclusion in generative grammar in principles and parameters theory, P&P. This was also supported by Bruce Hayes's metrical theory of stress rule, which was published in 1980, almost 15 to 12 years later. That was also a theory. Metrical theory is also a breakthrough, but a sub discipline of generative grammar itself, and it also has the similar effects like generative grammar. Hayes's metrical theory has its central claim that grammars of individual languages are built on a central core of fixed universal properties. Fixed universal properties are known as principles, plus a specification of a limited number of universal binary choices, that is parameter, presence or absence of something, some particular feature. So if there is a consonant in the language, that means it has a plus consonant. If the language does not have a consonant, that means it is minus consonant. This is not true in a practical world, but this is just an example. So examples of parameters are the side of the head as a syntactic constituent, left or right in syntactic phrases, or obligatoriness of an onset in the syllable, yes or no, whether there is a head of a particular syntactic constituent, if it is a head constituent or the non-head constituent, so absence or presence, then whether a particular syllable has an onset or not, yes or no. These are the parametric variations. The next argument is that constraints can be contradictory and therefore can be violated. So we already have noted in the second video that constraints are universal, but they can be violated in a language specific way. In a situation where two constraints are contradictory, the one that is ranked higher gets the priority. So you cannot or a language cannot violate a constraint which has a higher ranking than the others. Then some of the basic constraints are taken from two different types of constraint categories. One is faithfulness, the other one is markedness. Within faithfulness, you have the parse categories, which ask or which are defined as do not delete anything. And in the second category, depth, which also comes under the faithfulness type, it requires or it is defined as do not insert anything. So whatever is there in the input structure or the underlying representation of a particular linguistic form, just keep it like that. Do not delete as required by parse constraint and do not insert as required by depth constraint. The other type of OT constraint is called markedness type. So on this, you have a structural requirement that is only on the output form. For example, onset is one example, which requires that every syllable must begin with a consonant, and this kind of a structure is prohibited. And the other one is no coda, which requires that no syllable may end with a consonant. So all the syllables should be open. That means these two are two markedness type of syllables, constraints, which operate at the syllabic level of a linguistic structure. So how does a CV language then emerge? So some of the basic characteristic derivations are noted here. There are three examples you can see. In the input structure you have party, and in the output you also have party. So there is no change. But in the second case, because the language wants to conform to a CV structure, so a consonant is inserted to break the complex nucleus in I, in the input string pi. So pa is retained as same, but there is a onset consonant which has been inserted or appendicized to make it conform to the CV structure of the language. Similarly, to break this kind of a structure, pakti, you have a vowel inserted which makes the ka, which is a part of the complex structure or complex consonant sequence, it makes it pa, ka, ti. So again it is CV, CV, CV. And here are two different rankings of the particular variation which operates to have a typical CV language. So in the first W, as you can see, onset takes a precedence over depth. So appendices is fine, but you cannot have a no onset or a syllable without any onset. So from an input pi, Pawi is the one which is the optimal candidate. This is symbolized with this particular symbol. That's the symbolic notation for optimal candidate, which is the winner. But this is not good because in this case, pa e, this is a syllable e which does not have an onset, and this particular candidate violates a higher rank constraint in this case. So we can see onset dominates or outranks depth. No coda, on the other hand, also takes precedence over depth. So no coda cannot be violated, but depth can be violated because the language accepts some kind of appendices, whether it's a consonant or a vowel, but it does not allow any syllable to have no onset and a coda. So from an input structure of this kind, you can see that there are two candidates generated, and in the first case you can see that an insertion of a vowel is allowed, but this kind of a syllable pak is not allowed because no coda cannot be violated. It is a higher rank constraint. So that is all for today.